everyone, welcome. And as you're filtering in, we are getting ready to start for what promises to be a fascinating session with Himani, who just told us she's a computational biologist.
So I am Himani. Hello, everyone. I am currently based in Cambridge in the United Kingdom, where I'm working as a postdoctoral scientist in the Laboratory of Molecular Biology. But before that, I was in India and I did my PhD from an institute known as Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore. And I'm going to talk about the systems that I was working in during my PhD called the bacterial toxin antitoxin systems. Right. And as Karishma and Snehal have already mentioned, I am a computational biologist. Right. And I'll be talking all about the bacterial toxin antitoxin systems from that point of view. But before we proceed further, I would just like to, probe my audiences today and all the young minds here. What do they think about bacteria? Like, what do you know about it? As in, can you see bacteria? Where do you think it is found?
Sindhu says germs.
Ah, amazing.
Yes.
Okay.
AKS says helpful yet some harmful. Pooja says
Wonderful.
bacteria are found everywhere.
That's very great. Great.
Incurred prokaryotes,
Right.
unicellular, nitrogen
Right.
in plants.
Perfect. So that means many of you already have an idea what bacteria is, right? They are microscopic. You can't really see them. They are tiny. So let's just start with, pay tribute to these friendly creatures, I would say, or some unfriendly. And then let's just take it from there, right? So let's talk a teeny bit about the bacteria. So as you see a bacteria here, and as somebody said already that they are everywhere. And that is so true. Bacteria are everywhere, You cannot see them, but they are just there. So do you know why do we not get sick all the time if they are already there, all everywhere? That's because probably we have a lot of good bacteria, right? And good bacteria, as somebody also said, that is found in our gut. So can you tell me what you guys have to do to keep your good bacteria happy? Do you need to eat some kind of food that can keep your good gut bacteria happy?
Yes, say them. Yes, eat healthy food. Eat
Yes.
anything, says Adrit. We wish. We wish. Uh,
We should
Yeah.
use fermented food.
Amazing. Yes. Like idli, dosas, right?
yes. Healthy
Amazing.
food,
Amazing. Yeah.
probiotic.
Probiotics, indeed. So let's just take a look at what I have here today. Yes, probiotics and any food that can keep your gut bacteria happy, you can just have it, right? And I think you know this when you get stomach upset or something, your grandparents ask you to eat a lot of curd, lot of yogurt, right? So that contains ingredients that will keep your good bacteria happy. But of course, we have bad bacteria as well. And you know what a bad bacteria can do, right? It can make us sick and we have to take medicines to treat ourselves, right? Now, we know that all organisms, sorry, I cannot just see this thing. I'm sorry, Karishma, just give me a second.
Yeah, no problem, Himani.
Yeah, I think this,
We see a white slide with the title All Living
yes,
Things Adapt to Survive. A to
yeah,
Z.
yeah,
Yeah.
I cannot just see this. Okay, yeah.
Aa gaya.
So all the organisms, of course, adapt to survive, right? And one very, very common example is a chameleon. And I'm sure you guys must have already seen a chameleon somewhere in a garden or in a playground or anywhere, and it changes beautifully into different colors and blends.
Yes.
Now, again, one more question for the audience, and I would like to keep it interactive, right? So, why do you think a chameleon changes color?
It has a really good dress sense.
Okay.
Is my
Interesting.
answer.
I like the sense of humor.
But go ahead, Snehal, yeah.
To camouflage, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
And then,
Lots of
yes, the
people.
main thing is that it does it to escape their predators, right? So, and can anyone know any other animals that do that, adapt with their surroundings, or with they change themselves? Can anybody tell me?
Okay, lots of
Octopus,
people are saying spiders, octopus.
tiger. Oh yeah, tiger. Okay,
Okay, I
wonderful.
see
Yes, so
leaf
I have
insects.
listed here, right, right. Many insects, yes, exactly. You don't see insects in the winter, right? They just hibernate. So there are many examples of animals that sleep to survive difficult conditions, right? Like snakes, hedgehogs, or beetles and mosquitoes and insects, right? But do you think humans do that? we also adjust according to changing weather in that way, right? For example, we change our clothing according to winter, spring. Yeah, we don't just go to sleep in winters, of course, just like a bear or this thing, but we have our own ways of adjusting to changing weather. But let me introduce here a very good old friend of ours, bacteria, which has been around for almost 3.5 billion years. Can you imagine? It appeared on this earth way before than humans arrived here, right? And they have been around. So how do they do it? And what do bacteria do to adapt? What do you think they do? They also sleep, you know. They just go to sleep. So you must be wondering, when does a bacteria decide to sleep? Right? So for that, we need to understand how a bacteria grows, first of all. So here is a bacteria, right? Yeah, so here is a bacteria happily, you know, waiting for the food, and it arrives. Here my bacteria likes burger. I'm sure you guys also like the burger, right? What does it do? It eats up the food source and divides, right? And divides into two. Then again, the food is still available for the bacteria to eat. What it'll do? It'll again eat and divide into four now, right? And still they will continue to do it till the food is available for them. Like here, the food source is still available. What they do? Again, divide and divide and divide until they have very, very less food now, right? Now, what do you think they will do if there is no food? Can anybody guess? They die.
Somebody says die. Somebody says, do they eat themselves?
They can. Yes, so I see that people are guessing it right, that they sleep. Indeed, they sleep to conserve their energy, right? And it is not just that the food scarcity of food makes them sleep. There are other harsh conditions that can make them sleep, right? And these harsh conditions can be change in temperature of their environment. It can be change in the pH, like the medium where they are growing can become acidic or basic, or even, you know, the concentration of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the atmosphere can make them to go sleep. Also, apart from that, the pressure and light conditions can also make them sleep here, right? Now, how do bacteria sleep? Like, how are they achieving this for the last 3.5 billion years, you may ask? So the one of the way that they achieve this is by forming endospores. Now, what is endospores? In the previous slide, you see that a bacteria divides, right, to grow. So when they see harsh conditions or the scarcity of food, instead of just dividing, they form a hard shell around them inside. And when the normal conditions come back, they just start growing again. So that's the endospore. There is another way in which they go to sleep, right? So that says that they condense their DNA. Now, what is DNA condensation? It can be seen from this example here of a coil. Now you see that if a coil, you would have seen it here as a data cable, right? When it is extended, it would expose all part of its genetic material to keep its function active. And when its function is active, the bacteria will divide and grow happily, right? But when the stress conditions come, the bacteria let its DNA or the genetic material just getting compact, right? And when it gets compact, the part of the DNA gets hidden inside. And now all of it will not be active. And when all the DNA is not active, what will happen? The bacteria can go to sleep. Then these two mechanisms, or there are other mechanisms as well, have been known for a very long time in the scientific community. What is relatively recent in terms of scientific research is the discovery of another special armory in bacteria, which is called as the toxin and antitoxin systems. And this is the topic of our discussion today, right? So before we go into the details about what are toxin antitoxin systems, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Himani. The session is going absolutely wonderful. So Anusha mentions tardigrades.
Right.
Do tardigrades also have some sleep protection mechanism analogous to this?
They have, but I'm not sure if they are based upon toxin antitoxin.
Toxin antitoxin, true.
Because they are different organisms, right? So, but yes, they are probably the organisms which survive everything in this universe, and they are even found in the universe and space, right?
Yeah,
So they
exactly,
have different
exactly.
mechanisms. Yes, they also adapt such mechanisms.
Yes, yes, they are all one up, Himani. They can be
Totally.
frozen in space, can be brought back to life.
Exactly. I mean, they are present like deep down the oceans and everywhere. They withstand pressure, harsh conditions. I think they are even superior to bacteria in that way.
Yeah, yeah, could be. They can survive nuclear
Yes. Oh yes,
radiation.
nuclear. Exactly. They are
Yeah,
found everywhere, basically everywhere.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I think they are getting the concept of adaptation to survive. They are
Yeah,
understanding that. I think that's
that's good.
coming forth really strongly. Yeah.
That's good. That's what I wanted them to know, that what we are getting into. So
Yes,
I
yes.
hope I'm really glad that they are
My
liking it.
adaptation to survive is sleep.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do a good deal of it tonight and tomorrow afternoon. I need to
Yeah.
survive. I need to survive the week. Let's just put that.
Exactly, exactly. Wish I could do that every day.
Yes, yes.
Just sleep all the way, don't have to do any work, and just stay like bacteria. But we are humans, we can't do that.
You can't do that. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay,
So
go
there's a
ahead. Go
nice
ahead.
question. There's a question in the chat window, Himani. The question is,
Uh-huh.
are there bacteria that can harm plants or that can
Yes,
kill plants?
there are a lot of them. Yeah. So bacteria can basically infect anything or any living thing on this planet. So there are. Yeah. So shall I go ahead?
Yes, sure.
Okay. So let's now come to the topic of our discussion today, the toxin-antitoxin systems, and I will explain in further slides how they help bacteria adapt and how they help bacteria to sleep and then recover. Okay, there is again a question for the young minds. This time no scientific question, but can you guys tell me your favorite cartoon character which are best friends? See, I am coming from a bygone era, and probably I don't know all the cartoon characters now. I'm still stuck in the age of Tom and Jerry. Shin Chan, SpongeBob. Sorry, Snehal, I'm also looking at the chat box in between. Somebody's asking me the question, where are the antitoxins stored? I'll come back to it. Doraemon, Frozen, Chota Bheem, right. So I think I featured two of the best friends here in my slide today. One is the famous Doraemon and Nobita, and one is SpongeBob and his best friend, Patrick Star, right? Now, you all must be knowing that these pairs of best friends are always together. They help each other coming out of difficult situations. They go in all the adventures together, right? And if one gets lost or they can't find each other, then they get really, really unhappy, right? And then in the end, they have to come back together. So similarly, inside the bacterial cell, there are two best friend proteins, right? One is toxin and the other, its partner, antitoxin, okay? And as I said, that they have to be best friends all the time. So they keep holding their hands together all the time. And this will help the bacteria grow and survive and dance and eat whatever they want to do, right? But under the stress conditions, right, what happens is the antitoxin goes away. The toxin loses its best friend and it gets really, really angry. So what it does, it attacks its own self. It attacks the bacteria in which it is surviving. Now, you might be finding it a little confusing, but I hope that it will be more clear to you when we move further, right? Now, I just mentioned that the toxins and antitoxins are proteins, right? So let's just do a recap of what proteins are. I'm sure all of you would have heard it in your school lectures that proteins are the functional building blocks of all life forms, right? So when I say building blocks, it's literally the building blocks, right? So you see the Lego blocks, you must have seen it lying in your house, in your friend's house, or any play store where you go, right? And what can you do with these? So you can actually arrange them in different ways and get any meaningful structure. Well, I have here got a hybrid of Aquaman and Batman, but they're my building blocks, right? I can make anything I want to make, right? But if we now make it analogous to proteins, then we have amino acids, which are the building blocks of proteins. These amino acids are chemicals, right? Which when come together in different fashion and different order, they can give rise to a lot of proteins inside the cell and a lot of proteins that are found in all living creatures in this planet, on this planet, right? Now, the next question is, okay, the protein has formed. What does it do then? Is it like stationary inside the cell? So the answer is no. The protein starts jiggling and wiggling, right? It keeps on shaking itself. And here is the example of a protein that you see like this. Now you must wonder, how am I able to see a protein? You cannot really see it with the naked eye. But we have a lot of computational and experimental methods which can help us enhance our viewing of the proteins. But now that's the topic of discussion for some other time, right? So what happens next? What do you think can happen, right? When we see other people, what do? We try to talk to them, right? We have different languages which help us talk to them and communicate with them. For example, if I ask you right now, what are you guys doing? You might say that we are trying to learn about toxin and antitoxins, right? In the same way, proteins talk to each other. And how do they do it? By moving towards each other and then shaking hands with them. For example, here is a movie of another example protein called fibrinogen. And you can clearly see that the protein is moving towards its another friend or another partner. And if you also pay attention, the another partner is literally opening its arms to, welcome or shake hands with the other protein. So this is how they communicate. And when we say that proteins communicate with each other, what does it mean? It means that they are sending signals to the other protein, and that signal is being transferred to other proteins. And this is how the whole functions inside the cell is carried out, right? With this background, let's go back to our toxin-antitoxin systems. How do they talk to each other? So now if you imagine that this box here is a bacterial cell, okay? And you are trying to look it through your microscope. You see right now everything very blurry, right? But you can see that there are a lot of things inside a cell. And now you imagine that I am going to focus my microscope, right? So what do you see? And I call TA as toxin antitoxin 1, toxin antitoxin 2. So these are different toxin antitoxin systems inside a bacterial cell. So what do you think these are doing? Can you just say anything? Would you like to write, the young minds out there?
Yep. I think they'll.
Oh, they are?
Pooja says sleeping.
Okay.
Good idea. Talking, shaking. Go ahead, Sneha. Go ahead.
Yeah, they're shaking hands, linking,
Yeah.
attaching.
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect. I think most of them have got it right, that they are shaking hands with each other, right? And as I said previously as well, that if proteins have to interact with each other, they have to literally hold on to each other like this and then, communicate with each other. But this is all like a cartoon representation, you all know. So let me show you how they actually look like in, I would say, real life, right? So here is a toxin protein. It's in red in color. And here is its antitoxin best friend in blue color. Now you can see that they are different in shapes because proteins come in all shapes and sizes, right? So you have toxin and antitoxin, and you can also see, just like in the previous picture, they move towards each other and then just lock each other and shake hands, right? And as I said in the beginning, or in the two slides before, that for the bacteria to happily grow, these two proteins have to always shake hands, right? So in the normal conditions, when the bacteria is actively growing, these two interact with each other, right? Okay, let's listen to a story before we go into how these toxin-antitoxin systems help a bacteria, right? Long time ago, in a galaxy far away, a planet was attacked, right? So what happens if a planet gets attacked? The living beings on that planet, they decide to fight back, right? So what do they do when they decide to fight back? They will send their soldiers to fight with the enemy, right? But now on this planet, I think they are losing the war. They are just not able to win it because the enemy is too strong. So what do? Some wise heads on the planet, they meet together and they take a very difficult decision. What that difficult decision, you may ask, is that they decide that while some of them go to fight the enemy, the others just hide. What would it mean? It would mean that they are willingly sacrificing some of their soldiers to protect the others on the planet. Because right now, the enemy is so strong that it can just wipe away the whole population from the planet, right? So they just let the other smaller people on the planet just sleep. So what happens next? The enemy is fooled by this. This strategy really worked, right? So the attackers leave thinking that because they have killed some of their soldiers, they have won the war, right? But did that really happen? What do you think? Right? Can you just guess? Do you think that they won the war?
Everybody's saying no. Daksh says yes.
Okay.
Okay, I'm seeing lots of no's.
Lots of no's. That's right. Actually, you're right. They actually haven't won the war. Why? Because some of them had slept at that time. And when the normal conditions arrived, one of them just woke up. And what did it do? It woke up everybody else who was sleeping. And then they divided, and they're now dancing. And the whole population is just recovering from the war, right? So this is basically their nice strategy where they actually sacrifice some of them to protect the other ones. And this strategy is called survival strategy, right? So let's now go to the toxin antitoxin systems. And let's try to relate it to the story that I just told you guys. There is a bacteria happily dancing, growing. Look at its face. It's just so happy, unaware of what is going to happen now, right? And suddenly harsh conditions arrive. If you remember from my previous slide, harsh conditions can be change in temperature, change in the pH, gases, light, or pressure. It's just like the enemy that attacked the planet, right? Now, what does the bacteria do? Of course, it gets worried. And just like they sent out the soldiers to war, it just sends out all its army to war. But it's not just able to survive because the conditions are too harsh, right? So what does it do? Just like the wise heads of the planet, it also takes a very tough decision, right? What does it do? It summons its toxin antitoxin systems. Now, the toxin antitoxin systems, as I already said, are best friends, right? Now, they are happily coming on the command of the bacteria, but because antitoxin has to go, because it has to activate the toxin to make it angry, right? So antitoxin just leaves. What does the toxin do now? Toxin is very angry because it can't find its best friend. It just goes and finds any other protein inside the bacterial cell, here, for example, a gyrase, and just tries to hold hands with it. But it can't do anything because it is not having its antitoxin best friend with it, right? Now it's still angry. So when the toxin, it attacks the other proteins in the cell, it slows down the bacterial growth. But toxin is not happy here because it's still not able to find its best friend. So it goes on a rage, right? So what happens? It just randomly starts attacking any other protein or DNA or RNA in the bacterial cell. What will happen next if everything else is, gone? It will kill some of the bacteria, the soldiers that were sent strategically to the planet, right? And then some of them will just go to sleep, right? So here, the bacteria also did the same thing. It sacrificed some of its bacterial members to protect the others so that others can go to sleep, right? Now, you must be thinking, if the bacteria has slept and others have got killed, what happens? How can you wake them up? Let me ask you a question here. How do you guys wake up in the morning? Can somebody tell me?
The answer might be Himani, because we have to.
So that's true. Moms.
Okay.
Amazing. Yeah. Mama wakes up.
Alarm, moms. I can
Somebody
see
wakes up
moms.
themselves. Who's this person? Wow. I could never wake up myself. Mummy, parents. Perfect. So many of you say that your parents wake you up. Now I ask you another question. How do your parents wake up?
I would say the answer to that is work.
Okay.
Just a lot of work.
Lot of work. That's true. That's true. But even if you have to work, something has to, still trigger that in you.
Yeah. So mostly, I guess everyone is saying on their own, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Or an
But some of
alarm.
alarm, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the answer I was looking for basically. So I've got it. Many people have said it right. That an alarm wakes you, either it wakes you up or it wakes up your mom's parents and they wake you up, right? So what happens when you think an alarm goes? Your parents set up an alarm already in the night to decide on the time where you want to wake up, right? When you want to wake up, like 6 in the morning. If you have a lot of work, you'll wake up 5 in the morning. Or if it is a Sunday, you'll probably wake up at 9 in the morning, right? So here now the bacteria is sleeping, okay? Because of all the environmental stress it had, and it had summoned all the toxins and everything, and it's just sleeping. But before it slept, it actually set an alarm for itself somehow, that when to wake up, right? And when that alarm rings, the antitoxin, the good old antitoxin, best friend of the toxin, wants to come back, right? Because it's the only thing in this world that can stop the toxin from creating a havoc, right? So now the toxin comes, antitoxin comes, it finds its toxin partners, and now the bacteria starts growing, right? Then again, this is part of the bacterial cycle. Let me show you how it happens in the real life. Now, these are real life toxin antitoxin proteins. The blue color here is the toxin protein. The purple color here, which just flew away and tried to bind to it, is the antitoxin protein, right? And the antitoxin is trying to get its best friend back from the gyrase protein, which I showed in the previous slide. So what happens? The antitoxin just pushes away the gyrase and it says bye-bye, and best friends are up again, right? The toxin and antitoxin best friends are inside the bacteria and they are becoming best friends again, so that the toxin can no longer attack the other proteins or DNA or bacteria or RNA inside the bacteria, right? So what do you think will happen now if the best friends are up again?
Alas is happy.
Right.
They grow,
Amazing.
multiply.
Amazing. Happy. They will wake up. Oh, I'm so happy you guys are getting it. Wow.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. But your explanation is outstanding, literally
Thank you. Thank
outstanding.
you.
Yeah.
I'm really happy that you guys are understanding this concept. Amazing. All siblings. Vaccinated, somebody says. Wow.
Random comments, always there.
Okay, so yes, you guys are absolutely right that they wake up and they happily start to grow again because the harsh conditions have gone back, right? Before we move on further, if you guys have any questions, I would really love to answer them.
Okay, Arya has a question. Her question is, why do some bacteria have to be sacrificed? Why can't they just all go to sleep?
That's a very, very good question. Actually, what happens is that it is, how do I explain? Okay, when you first time get an infection, for example, in the body, right? A bacterial infection or say a regular fever, you still get sick for the first time, right? So some of your body cells, they train themselves that we are attacked by this bacteria or virus. But the next time when the same virus comes, it doesn't attack you, right? So what happens is you sacrifice some of your health timing to learn what to do next when it comes the next time. So this is similar in that case, that the bacteria tries to adjust. It cannot adjust immediately when the weather changes or when the climatic changes, right? So to survive the change in weather conditions, the change in food or anything, they have to sacrifice some of them so that they can protect the rest of it. So bacteria doesn't, come alone. It comes as a colony, right? It never survives in a single thing. So that's how it happens, that some of them fight the war to protect the remaining of them. So that's why it happens.
So Kavishas, what happens if the antitoxins never come back?
Well, then the bacteria will never be able to wake up. That's the straightforward answer. But that's what, when bacteria goes to sleep, it does set up a time when the antitoxin would come back. Now, that's a very detailed thing that can happen. And I'm not sure if I can explain it right away. But yes, if they don't come back, they will never wake up.
Okay.
Excellent question, excellent explanation.
Yeah.
Yeah, Snehal, I don't know what you and I are doing here at this point. Like,
Akshat has a
These are
really,
asking
really
amazing
fun question.
questions. Sorry.
Yeah, Akshat has a really fun question. His question is, why are toxin and antitoxin best friends? Can't they just make other friends?
We will come to it. That's a very good question. We will definitely come to it. I'm going to cover it. Why am I presenting? These guys know everything, you know. They know what I'm going to come to in the next slides.
Okay, so there are two questions maybe that I'll combine because they're similar. So one question is, don't the toxins actually harm the cell itself, the bacterial cell? And the other question is, if the toxins are attacking the different parts of the bacteria, how can the bacteria successfully infect us?
Yeah. So exactly, that's again a good question. So these toxins are toxic to the bacteria. Okay, if the antitoxin is not present, that's the condition. If the antitoxin is present, the bacteria will never attack. The toxin will never attack the bacterial cell, right? And the second part, yes, when the toxins are, if the toxins are attacking the bacteria itself, they will not be able to affect us. And that's what I'm going to cover in the next few slides, that how can we use these bacteria for our benefit so that they don't attack us, but they just kill themselves, right? And also, just to add on to these things, I remember that I should tell you that these toxins are only toxic to the bacteria. They are not toxic to humans or any other host that these bacteria infect, right?
I guess wonderful. Himani.
Mihika has a question. Her question is, why do antitoxins go away in the first place?
Again, so these antitoxins go away because the conditions have become bad, right? Now the bacteria has strategically asked it to just go away so that the toxin can be activated. Now, how it goes away is that the bacteria whispers something in its ears and then it just says, okay, I'm going to go hide. Okay, so that's the thing.
Okay, and maybe one more question before we.
Oh, we can ask. We have time. Don't worry. Yeah.
So Kavish has a question. He says, where do the antitoxins go exactly? Do they go outside the bacterial cell?
Yeah, actually, that's a very technical question, I would say, and very interesting one. So inside the bacteria, as you said, when I showed this picture here, right? I will just go back a step back. I showed this picture here, right? This one. Here, you can see that the other proteins are getting just chopped off. So this happens with antitoxin as well when it goes away at the first place. So some signals are sent by the bacteria and it chops off the antitoxin. So it just vanishes from the system. That's what happens.
Mm-hmm. So Ala asks, can there be more than one type of toxin-antitoxin pairs? Best
Absolutely.
Friends, in a single bacterial cell?
In a single bacteria, yeah. So this is again a very good point of research these days. So when they were discovered almost like 30 years ago, it was only found in like 1 or 2 in numbers in different bacteria. But over the time, when they started doing research, and even when I was doing my PhD, we realized that many a times the pathogenic bacteria or the bad bacteria have more number of these toxin-antitoxin systems than the good bacteria, right? So because these are very important systems for their survival. So, and all these bad bacteria have to survive more than good bacteria because everybody is trying to kill them, right? So these, there are lots of toxin-antitoxin systems in a bacteria which causes, say, TB, than a random gut bacteria in our intestines.
Right, like lactobacillus or something like
exactly. That probably has no toxin-antitoxin system because it has no pressure to withstand, right?
Exactly.
There are a lot of them. Yes.
Great questions, guys. I mean,
amazing. I'm so happy. I was actually a little worried that what if, these systems are too boring for the kids and they don't understand, and what will I do?
Absolutely amazing, Himani. Your explanation as well. So anyway, we can go on. Yes.
Anything else? Any other questions?
No, we can go ahead and then we'll come back to some questions when you're done with this section.
Perfect. I think that makes sense. Yeah. Okay. So I think some of you have already guessed now that what I'm going to talk. We have already understood, hopefully so far, that why are these systems present in the bacteria? What do they do? But of course, why are we even studying them? It's none of our concern what bacteria does, right? How it survives. We have to think about ourselves. But we can use these systems. So now let's go back to our bad bacteria, right? It can cause diseases. But now we know this secret about these toxin antitoxin systems, how the bacteria can use it for its own evolution and adaptation. So next the question comes, can we do something about it? Or can we use them, somehow to make them go from this state to this state? As in, the one where it is always present with its best friend antitoxin and it is not harmful to the bacteria, but to this state where it is really angry and it's gonna kill the bacteria itself, right? So that's what we want to do artificially. In the normal conditions, it will never happen automatically. It only happens when the bacteria has to survive. But if the bacteria attacks us and cause diseases in us, it is actively growing. So we want to stop it from growing by killing the antitoxin somehow. Now we can do it in two ways. One, as somebody said, we can give toxin a new friend, right? So here you see that if the toxin is here, you can see a similar looking or in shape kind of a thing, this new friend to the toxin. Or we can also give antitoxin a new friend artificially. Now let me just go in a little detail of what happens. So if we give toxin a new friend, this cannot be just a regular best friend. We have to train it and whisper something in its ear so that it makes the toxin angry. Now that seems like a two-step process, right? Because you have to give toxin a friend, it has to go and find the toxin, it has to make friendship, but then in the friendship, it also has to make it angry. So that's a difficult thing to do. So there comes the next solution, which says, if we give antitoxin a new friend. So if you see here now, this half portion of your new friend looks like toxin. The antitoxin can get confused and will shake hands with this antitoxin, right? Now it's simple, right? We have just taken the antitoxin away and it automatically makes toxin very, very angry. And we can use this to our benefit as humans. And we can artificially activate these molecular bombs. Now, why am I calling them molecular bombs? Because you've just seen them, right? If you detonate them artificially, it can just kill the bacteria and can be useful for humans. Okay, finally, we have a time to play some game. Okay. Would you like to design some new friends for toxins and antitoxins? Right? And let's see. If this is a pair of toxin and antitoxin here, let us guess which of the A, B, and C can be the new friends for the bacteria. Anybody wants to take guesses?
Pooja saying C.
Okay.
Combination of BC, BC,
BC,
lots of
BC.
BCs.
Yeah.
Mostly BCs, a few A's.
BCs. Perfect. Let's just see what I have here. Yes, so whosoever said B is actually right. You can see it here now, right? You can imagine how this B can easily go and snuggle around the toxin and can actually be its new best friend, right? Let's go to the antitoxin. Let's see if we can design some new friends for the antitoxin. Here again, I have three options. Can you guys tell me?
Okay, lots of C's.
Right. I think these people have got a hang of it. Amazing.
I know, totally.
You guys are brilliant. I couldn't even think of these things when I was a kid, you know? Yeah. So you're right. So this C protein will easily go and fit with the antitoxin, right? Now our aim is to somehow make the toxin angry so that it can kill the bacteria. Again, I'll just come back to the same question. I hope you have, you would be able to answer this. If not, don't worry. So which strategy do you think will be more effective in defeating the bad bacteria? Like giving toxin a new best friend or giving antitoxin a new best friend?
Anushka says antitoxin.
Amazing.
Okay, I see lots of people saying antitoxin. Aditi
Antitoxin.
says toxin.
Okay. We can do both. It's not a problem. But which is better? Antitoxin. Amazing. All these people are giving unanimous answers, most of them. Wow.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I had prepared a backup that if they say something wrong, I will say something, but I don't have to do it. They are doing perfectly fine, you know. I
Yes.
don't have to do that. I'm so happy. It gives me the motivation to, continue further. So this is really, really interesting. Yeah. Okay. So shall we move on or do we want to take any question?
Okay, let me check. I think there are. Okay, so Ala asks, can there be 3 best friends?
There can be. Now, this is another branch of this whole biology that there can be a third protein that can be a best friend. But in most of the cases, it's 2.
It's
But
true.
there can be a third one.
Third. So it's like Sholay with Jay, Viru, and that Dhano.
Yeah, the Dhanno can come.
Dhano can come, yeah.
Yes. In times of need, Dhanno can come. But otherwise, Jai Viru are just fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I think there was another question in the chat. Do we have similar antitoxin toxin systems in our body?
No, humans do not have it. We don't need it. Bacteria needs it because we do not undergo such harsh conditions, right? We don't know. Maybe 1,000 years down the line, if humans also experience such conditions, we may develop something. But right now, we do not. Yeah. Okay, let's move further then.
Yes.
Perfect. Now, as I said, that we have right now just designed in form of a game, the new best friends for toxins and antitoxins, right? So let's see, how do scientists like us do this? For that, let's just look at this example again. I'm going to give an analogy to help it, a little more clear to you guys. So you guys see here that my phone is getting charged, right? There is a red color cable and the circuit is going on perfectly fine. It's the cable is attached to the charger head and the current is flowing and then my phone is charging, right? What do you see here? I mean, apart from my bad photography, what do you see here? Can anybody, does anybody want to type anything in the chat box?
Which says not connected, low battery.
They actually noticed the thing.
Yeah.
Broken. No energy. I thought people would, like, if I was there, I would say the phone is discharged. But yes, they actually pinpointed the right thing, that it is disconnected. Smart kids.
Very much, very much.
Very smart kids. Yeah. Perfect. I think you guys have actually decoded this, but just let me continue. And so here, when you see that everything is, perfectly connected and that's why the current is flowing. But if you see here, then of course the current is not flowing because it's disconnected. There is also one more thing that you can see here, that even if it is disconnected, there is something else that is now connected to it, right? Now this thing is not letting the actual cable to connect and form the circuit. So let's now go to our toxin antitoxin example. Here is the toxin and antitoxin pair. What we want to do is we want to break this pair somehow and free the toxin to go and attack the bacterial cells, proteins, right? Now, if we go back to this, if you remember this picture, everything is perfectly fine, normal, current flowing, the toxin antitoxin pair is working fine. What if we now just cut the cable here, right? Let the part of it be attached to it, but the charger head and everything is perfectly fine. What will happen in this case? The current will not flow, even though a part of the cable, it is still available here. So this is what we do as scientists. We try to design or take something from the toxin itself so that it is very, very similar for the antitoxin to find, right? Or what we can do is we can give it a bioanalog or something which is not part of the toxin, but still looks like a toxin, just like here, so that it can still fit the socket, but it will not let it function or not find its toxin partner. So what happens here? Now, if we have a part of the toxin fragment from the main protein, it can bind to the antitoxin, freeing the toxin. And what happens now? Toxin can go and kill the bacterial proteins, DNA and RNA, and achieve our function, right? So we are basically fooling the antitoxin to break away from the toxin and let the toxin do its job if it infects us, right? So I think I'm almost towards the end of my topic here, and let's just think recap about it, what we just saw and why we want to study these systems and why is it important for us to understand. One main thing is that we have pathogenic bacteria, or the bad bacteria that we call it, right? It can make us sick. How do we treat those? We take antibiotics, right? And we can have different generations of antibiotic. Like first antibiotic was developed years and years ago in the form of penicillin, but we do not take penicillin anymore, right? The current antibiotics are modifications of all these initial generation 1 antitoxins. Why do we need to design new antibiotics every time? This is because of this concept that some of the bacteria become resistant to it, right? For example, if you were taking azithromycin earlier and the same bacteria attacks you, it may not be effective against that, right? So, and I think this concept has been covered in the top TTAS sessions previously as well, right? So that's what we want to avoid, right? I see in the chat box somebody says superbugs. Yes, they become superbugs. Amazing. They remember everything. So here, when they become resistant, we can't do anything about it. We have to find new ways or new methods so that we can move away from the antibiotic therapy and we can find other ways to cheat the bacteria. Now, what is the best way here is to actually, just activate the bacterial cell's own machinery against itself, if we can do that. But I must tell you that this is a very exploring toxin-antitoxin systems as new way of finding medicines is a very relatively new field, and there are experiments going on currently as we speak to explore the possibility of having such a antibiotic or antibacterial therapy in use as clinical trials. But of course it will take some time to for us to get it there. So this is all I have for you guys today, and I hope you enjoyed the session. I'm ready to take more questions.
Absolutely, Himani. Absolutely.
Thank you, Himani. This was
No
really,
problem.
really amazing.
Thank you.
We can understand that it's a very precision-based approach to give the antitoxin a new friend.
Yes.
That's why there is more work needed till it becomes a standard therapy.
Till
It's
it
not
becomes the standard.
throwing antibiotics at it.
Yeah. So, this is what scientists basically do. Even though these systems were discovered 30 years ago, it has taken 30 years of time to understand what we have right now.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So even if we do not know everything about it, when I did my PhD, we were working towards finding new toxin-antitoxin systems computationally. And we did find 3 new toxin-antitoxin systems in bacteria in Mycobacterium tuberculosis, right? So they are still being discovered every day or probably every week in some other bacteria. And there are so many of them. So you really have to be very careful that you activate the right TA systems and not the wrong ones that affect humans in return.
Yes, absolutely.
So it takes years and years of research and trial and error and all those things to get to where we are right now. And this is what we as scientists do.
Very much, Himani. And different. All of us working in different aspects.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there are lots of questions in the chat window.
Okay.
The first, maybe just because we're on this slide, I'll take this question first. Can you explain a little more what do you mean by cheating bacteria?
Sure. So by cheating, I mean that what we did right now in the previous slide here, sorry, it's a little back. We design new friends, right? So when we design new friends, what are we doing? We are cheating the actual friends to have new best friends. Right? So this is what I mean, that we want to cheat the bacteria and fool it so that we can use it to our benefit. That's what cheating means.
They think it's their old best friend, but actually it's their new best friend.
Yes. Thank you, Karishma. Yeah, that's it.
Why is this sounding like a Kareena Kapoor? Right? Okay. All right.
Okay, so another question is, do different bacteria have different toxin-antitoxin systems?
Yes, There are a lot of toxin antitoxin systems, and some bacteria have 5, some bacteria have 80, and some bacteria have type A, type B, type C. There are a lot of them. I mean, if you go into the biology of these systems, there is a whole field of investigation where you find lots of these systems.
Okay. I think there's another. Yes. Do viruses and fungi have toxin antitoxin systems?
Viruses do not have. In fungi, actually, they are trying to find if they have it or not, but it's not confirmed. They may have, because they also have to survive, right? Or they may have a different kind of system which is not exactly toxin antitoxin, but similar to toxin antitoxin. Yeah, they may have. Yeah.
So
Okay.
Daksh is speaking on behalf of bacteria.
Uh-huh.
Snehal, you can see that. And he says, we are not cheating. We are protecting ourselves.
Very good. That's very true. We are not cheating. We are protecting ourselves. Yeah. We are letting the bacteria also grow, but not inside us.
Yes.
Yeah.
That sounds so diplomat-like, right?
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, you be happy wherever you are. Don't disturb me.
Go ahead, Snehal, go ahead.
Okay, so Pooja has a nice question, and like I think the reason this is nice is because we show all of these pretty like images with colors and stuff, but sometimes maybe it's not clear that that's not how things are in real. So the question is, do toxins and antitoxins have colors?
Well, actually, I mean, colors are defined by how we want to see them, basically, right? So if we stain a bacteria and we stain a protein, to see them in a microscope, they will have colors. But in actuality, toxin and antitoxins may just be like blobs or gray color, I would say. I mean, we can contrast them and give them color. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right. These all are pictures to make you understand what the concept is. This actually doesn't look like this. So for example, if I go back here to the movie that I showed you guys here. So this is also one of the ways in which, we see what is as close as we can get to the real, looking at the real proteins. And the colors I have given them, they do not have this color.
Oh, that's a beautiful image.
Thank you.
Okay, so Prashant has a question. Are the toxin antitoxin systems based on quorum sensing?
They help in quorum sensing. I mean, yeah, they help in persister formation and quorum sensing and giving the signals. And if both lots of bacteria are, present in a film, they can help a little. Yeah, but the mechanism is different. Yeah.
Okay. Another question is, what kind of microscope do you use to see these toxins, antitoxins?
Oh, actually, it's a different thing. You cannot see toxin and antitoxins directly through a microscope. You have to extract it out of the bacterial cell in terms of experiments, and then shine, say, cryo-electron microscope to see them. Or we have another technique called X-ray crystallography, through which we see these. We cannot directly see them in a microscope as such.
Not even in an electron microscope, right, Himani?
No, I don't think you can see them because they are inside the bacteria and they're so small. No, you cannot.
Yeah. Aditya, how many types of toxin antitoxin systems are known?
Are known. Oh my God, I can't count on my fingers. There are a lot of them. I cannot number. Sorry. Haven't counted them because, okay, I can give you an example of Mycobacterium tuberculosis, which causes MTB, which causes TB in humans. That has nearly 80 toxin antitoxin systems. 80.
Wow! In one species of
one of the bacteria which has the maximum, and I think one more. I think Neisseria gonorrhea maybe that has hundreds. Probably, I don't remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Another very nice question. How long do you work in a day?
That depends upon my micro environment. If my boss is pressurizing too much, I'll work more. And I wake up early. I set an alarm, just like toxin antitoxin systems, right? And if I have no work to do, I'll probably just laze around. I won't work. But yeah, if you have to think about it, you don't have to work like 12 hours a day. No, and seriously. But I mean, I think smart work of 3 to 4 hours a day is fine at your age.
Very much, very much. So scientists are real people, right? Snehal and Himani.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. We all eat, breathe, wear clothes, go to work.
I think I was
Can you
looking at a television series on Netflix about some scientists, and they were doing everything, like from morning to night. They were doing experiments. They were talking, and I was like, "This is not how scientists really work. You cannot
Yeah.
expect one scientist to do everything in this world."
Yes,
So they portrayed
exactly.
wrong. We are real
Yes.
people. You're right.
Very much, very much. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so Pooja has a very nice question. Pooja's question is, who inspired you to become a biologist?
Who inspired you to become a biologist? Okay, there are a lot of people, right from my school teachers, I would say, to every stage of my life has different people who have inspired me. I mean, if I have to take one name, it's probably, I would say, my husband right now, who has inspired me to do PhD and all those things, right?
Yes. Yes, certainly, certainly. I can resonate. That resonates very
Yeah,
much. It was also my husband who never let me quit the PhD.
exactly.
That doesn't mean you have to have a husband if you're doing a PhD, guys.
No, not at all.
Prerequisite,
Not at all.
but that resonates.
So, of course, I would like to thank my PhD supervisor, Professor Narayan Swami Srinivasan, and my mentor, my friend, Sandhya, without whom I would not have worked on these systems for sure. And of course, the Molecular Biophysics Unit and Indian Institute of Science. Then, of course, these two people have to be thanked for. And so that, for having me here and giving me the opportunity to interact with these young minds. Thank you so much for starting this Talk to a Scientist initiative. It's a great initiative. And of course, my husband, Tarun, who has been my inspiration for like ever. And he was also the motivation behind this presentation. And he has given critical inputs to improve it for kids.